Chapter 9:18. He was still wearing the same mask and baseball cap, making it impossible for others to see his face clearly. However, the current legend gave Yao a strong sense of familiarity. For some reason, she felt that the person before her was Legend, but at the same time, he wasn't Legend. Legend didn't say a word. Instead, he began walking toward her. As he got closer and closer, the strong sense of familiarity grew even stronger. Legend stopped roughly a meter away from Yao. Yao couldn't tell whether it was her imagination or not, but she felt as if Legend's eyes were staring at her from beneath his baseball cap. She frowned slightly, but before she could say anything, the man before her suddenly raised his hand and placed it on his cap. Legend can't be intending to show me his real face, right? What's his motive for doing this? Is he interested in me? After all, he even prepared a ticket for the finals for me. With such thoughts in mind, Yao hurriedly spoke up, "That? Adonis, I do admire you, but it's not the admiration of an idol. Do you know what that means? I already have a boyfriend." Before Yao could finish her words, Legend had already taken off his cap. That forehead, those eyes, those eyebrows, those hair. It's clear. It's clear. Yao felt as if someone had smacked her with a stick. She stared blankly at the man before her, who was dressed in a combat uniform. After removing his cap, she saw with her own eyes that the man's slender fingers fell on his mask, following which, the mask fell off, revealing a nose and mouth that she couldn't be more familiar with. That face sure is exquisite. It's as if it's a work of art crafted by God himself. Every inch of her skin and every facial feature was unbelievably perfect and unreal. That face sure is familiar. It's my boyfriend, Lin Jiej. Lin Jiej leisurely admired the dazed young lady before him. Roughly 3 minutes later, when he was sure that she had already digested this shocking news, he stretched out his hand and passed it over to Yao. "Let's get to know each other." "I'm Legend, Yao." "Let's get to know each other." "I'm Legend." This is Lin Jiej's voice, but he said that he's Legend. How is this possible? How can Lin Jiej be Legend? Did he know that she idolized Legend when she was young and was fulfilling her dreams? As countless thoughts flashed across Yao's mind, she stared at Lin Jiej in a daze and asked, "Lin Jiej, why did you impersonate my Adonis?" Lin Jiej. The more Yao thought about it, the more convinced she was that her guess was right. "Lin Jiej, how much did you spend to rent this uniform for my Adonis?" Lin Jiej, thank you for giving me such a Christmas surprise. But I think you should return the combat uniform. Lin Jiej. This wasn't in line with the script. Based on the script, shouldn't Soft Bun be agitated upon seeing that he was the Adonis whom she couldn't forget for many years? Shouldn't she be so moved that she would leap forward and hug him while shedding tears of gratitude? Lin Jiej, quickly return your uniform and change into your own clothes. Let's go for supper. I'm getting hungry from watching the match. Lin Jiej. Chapter 9:19. A slight frown appeared on his forehead, but he didn't reply to the person on the other end of the call. Instead, as if he had guessed something, he turned to Yao and asked, "Did you bump into someone from AE Squad on your way up?" Yao had no idea how Lin Jiej managed to guess it, and she was also curious as to why he would suddenly ask such a question. Thus, she nodded in response. Lin Jiej immediately understood what was going on. It was no wonder they were calling me nonstop. With this thought in mind, Lin Jiej brushed past Yao's body, walked up to the door, and pulled it open. Pong, you're crushing me. Following the opening of the door, Yao saw a few people crawling all over the floor. They were dressed in the exact same combat uniform as Lin Jiej, and they raised their heads to look at the lofty Lin Jiej before them with fawning smiles on their faces. Why would someone from AE Squad be eavesdropping at the door? As this thought flashed across Yao's mind, she heard the people at the door speaking up one after another. Captain, how did you know that we were at the door? Captain, who's that person? Isn't it sister-in-law? Captain, is he referring to Lin Jiej? So, I've misunderstood. Is Lin Jiej really a legend? Just as Yao was digesting this shocking news, the male student who had taken the elevator with her suddenly leaped up to her and greeted, "Sister-in-law, nice to meet you." Following which, The rest of the group got up from the floor and scrambled over to Shi Yao's side. Sister-in-law, nice to meet you. Sister-in-law, what's your name? Captain Sure is something. He actually managed to hide it from us for so long. It's no wonder he kept peeking at his phone during the training over the past 20 days. He must have been sending a message to sister-in-law. These people were simply too passionate, so much so that Shi Yao didn't know how to deal with them. In the end, she could only turn a pleading gaze toward Lin Jiej. Seeing Shi Yao's gaze, Lin Jiej cleared his throat. In an instant, the chattering male students around Shi Yao fell silent. Now that you've seen me, can we leave now? Following Lin Jiej's words, the crowd chuckled gleefully before dispersing and leaving room 2101. It was only after the door closed and silence returned to the room that Shi Yao's gaze finally fell on Lin Jiej. She stared at him for a long while before she finally asked a question that she found hard to believe. Lin Jiej, are you really my Adonis? Yes. Then, Adonis, are you really my boyfriend, Lin Jiej? Lin Jiej was rendered speechless for a moment. He raised his wrist to take a look at the time, and as if he was calculating something, he said, Yao Yao, I'll go wash my hair first. You should digest this news first. Before Shi Yao could respond, Lin Jiej had already entered the bathroom. After a while, the sound of running water came from the bathroom. When the sound of flowing water finally stopped, a thought suddenly came to Lin Jiej's mind. While wiping his dripping hair with a towel, he pulled open the bathroom door and said, Yao Yao, I've prepared a present for you. It's in the coat pocket by the floor-to-ceiling window. Go and take it yourself. Chapter 920. With a single glance, she saw Lin Jiej's jacket lying on the sofa in front of the French window. She bent down to pick up Lin Jiej's jacket, only to realize that it was a little heavy. She felt around the pockets, and in the inner pocket of the jacket, she found an exquisite velvet box. Opening it, she saw a sparkling diamond ring inside. Compared to the ring she'd proposed to him at Golden Resplendence, the diamond on this ring was like a pigeon's egg. Based on her understanding of the value of diamonds, if she were to wear this ring out, it would be as good as carrying a mansion in the heart of Beijing with her wherever she went. While Shi Yao was still in a daze, Lin Jiej's voice suddenly sounded in her ears, Yao Yao. Shi Yao turned her gaze over, only to see Lin Jiej, who had at some point washed his hair and blown it back into a beautiful hairstyle. Holding a bouquet of fresh flowers in his hands, he was walking toward her. It was only when he finally stopped in front of her that she finally straightened her body in a daze. She stared at him and moved her lips, but no sound came out. He stared into her eyes and said, the match in Shenzhen back in August was supposed to be the final match of my professional career, but because a woman told me that she hoped that I could clinch the championship of the Winter PGI World League, I chose to fight another match without any hesitation. In the previous matches, I fought for my passion, for the club, for my teammates, and for the fans who supported me. But for tonight's match, I didn't fight for anyone but that woman. When I posted on Weibo that I wanted to say that I was leaving, it was meant for Myriad Worlds. As for the latter part, I wanted to say that I was coming, it was meant for that woman. To Myriad Worlds, a legend is just a legend from now on, but to that woman, the legend belongs to her alone from now on. The woman told me that she's going to bid farewell to my childhood dream, and I replied to her with a goodbye. The woman told me that we'll never meet again, and I told her that we'll meet again later on. The girl also told me that almost all girls have a teenage dream of being with their idol, but all girls know that it's just a dream and it won't come true. After all, it's rare to see someone become Mrs. J. Chow's wife, and today, I want to ask you, such a rare opportunity has been placed in front of you. Are you willing to take it? Will you marry me? Yes, of course I'm willing. Shi Yao nodded vehemently without any hesitation. Lin Jiej put down the flowers in his embrace and took the diamond ring from her hand before slowly putting it on her finger. In the process of putting the ring on her finger, Shi Yao suddenly recalled the words that Lin Jiej had said to her that night. I've walked with you through your youth. The meaning behind those words was clear. He was telling her that even though he hadn't walked with her through her youth as Lin Jiej, he had always been by her side as a legend. The dream of her youth, the dream that she always thought she didn't dare to come true, was fulfilled by him. To her, Lin Jiej was the best Lin Jiej in the world. After putting on the ring, Lin Jiej stood up, and Shi Yao abruptly leaped into his embrace and hugged him tightly. He had moved her a lot, but at this very moment, she couldn't help but feel touched once more. She leaned against his chest, crying and laughing at the same time. She also felt embarrassed, but she just couldn't control her emotions. She felt that there were many things that she wanted to say to him, but she just couldn't think of anything at the moment. She lost her composure and cried, laughed and cried. She hugged onto him as if she had gone mad for a long while. Eventually, she leaned into his embrace and raised her head to look at him. With tears in her eyes, she chuckled and said, "Linjiej, I'm so happy that I can finally cuckold you without any qualms. Legend, you have to be careful. You might be exposed on the news tomorrow for sleeping with a fan." 2 years later. Chapter 9:21. 2 years later. It was winter once more. Linjiej was away on a business trip, and Shi Yao had lessons in the morning, so she spent the night in school. When she woke up the next morning, she received a WeChat message from Linjiej. "Yao Yao, I'm done with my work, and I've booked an early flight back to Beijing. I might have to head to the company for a meeting, so I'll pick you up at school in the afternoon." After reading the message, Shi Yao took a look at the time Linjiej had sent the message. It was 5:30 a.m. Most likely, he was on the way to the airport when he sent the message. Shi Yao replied with an emoji before climbing out of bed to wash up. When she came out of the bathroom, she took a look at her phone. Linjiej didn't reply to her message, so she thought that he was probably hovering at an altitude of 30,000 feet. "I have an entire morning of lessons today, so I'll be revising with Tian at the cafe next to the school. You can come to the cafe to look for me." After sending the message, Shi Yao quickly tidied herself up, grabbed her textbooks, and headed to the cafeteria for breakfast before heading to class. After her afternoon lesson, Shi Yao took out her phone and saw Linjiej's reply. After chatting with Linjiej for a while, she heard Zhang Yu and the others calling her for lunch, so she quickly grabbed her things and left the classroom. By the time she arrived at the school's cafeteria, it was already filled with people. Most of them were unfamiliar but energetic faces. Looking at this scene, Tian couldn't help but remark, in the blink of an eye, we're already in year 4, becoming the oldest people in the school. Back then, we were just like them, shouting and laughing in the cafeteria, not caring about how others looked at us. Indeed, back then, the one we talked about the most in the cafeteria was Senior Lin. But now, the Adonis of the freshmen have all changed. Zhang Yu sighed. Lung Nuan, who had been silent all this while, looked at the bustling scene before her with a calm voice. Even if the Adonis of the freshmen have changed, they're still from Yao Yao's family. That's right, that's right. Yao Yao's family is really a Adonis maker. Back then, our Adonis, Senior Lin, became Yao Yao's boyfriend, and now, the new Adonis are Yao Yao's cousins. Tian, who had always judged good people based on their appearance, couldn't help but widen her eyes upon mentioning Gu Nanxiang. Speaking of Gu Nanxiang, the Adonis that Lord Ji was full of praises for, Shi Yao couldn't help but feel a little confused. What was so handsome about Gu Nanxiang? There were actually so many little girls who were infatuated with him. Moreover, this rascal was sloppy and playful. He changed girlfriends like a girl playing a game of changing clothes. Until now, she couldn't even remember how many girls had called her sister sweetly. More importantly, these fangirls of Gu Nanxiang probably didn't know that this rascal had handed in blank papers all the way from middle school to high school, right? The more Tian spoke, the more agitated she became. "Say, why didn't I go with Yao Yao to fetch Junior Gu on the day he entered the school? If I were to go with Yao Yao to pick him up, perhaps I would be in a favorable position to enjoy the moonlight first. Now I have already fallen in love with Junior Gu. I really regret it, but you don't say. Yao Yao's family's genes are really good. Junior Gu and Yao Yao's eyebrows are really alike. Gu Nanxiang looks like me? Alright then. I'll admit that he's the current leader of G University's looks." Chapter 9:22. Zhang Yu. Tian, I've recorded your words. I'll send it to Desolate year later. Tian, Zhang Yu, why you dare? If you dare to send it, I'll send the photo I took of you taking off your bra last night to your buddy. Watching Zhang Yu and Tian bickering, Shi Yao and Lung Nuan couldn't help but smile. Then, Yao couldn't help but mutter softly, I'm afraid we won't get to see such a beautiful scene in the future. Lungwan heard Yao's words and understood what she meant. Indeed, it's going to be our final exams in less than a month's time. And after the spring festival, we'll all be busy with our internships. After that, we'll all be going our separate ways. Hearing their words, He Tian and Jiang Yu stopped bickering. Instead, they turned to look at Yao and Lungwan. Jiang Yu, I've already told my parents that I won't be returning to my hometown. I'll be staying in Beijing, and my buddy has promised me that he'll keep an eye out for jobs for me. Once I find a good internship, I'll settle down in Beijing. He Tian, I'm not going back either. I'll be staying in Beijing too. Hasn't Senior Liu already bought a house in Beijing? Wan, you'll be staying in Beijing too, right? So, the four of us will be staying in the same city. Even after we graduate, we won't be separated. Jiang Yu, that's right. We'll still be together. Speaking of which, Senior Lin has already proposed to Yao. It should be about time for the wedding ceremony after we graduate, right? What about you, Wan? When are you going to settle your engagement with Senior Liu? Hearing Jiang Yu's words, Lung Wan's fingers trembled slightly, but her tone remained as calm as ever. We'll see. As if afraid that everyone would continue asking her about this topic, she spoke up once more. Hurry up and get your food. If you don't go now, all the good food will be snatched up by others. After lunch, Lung Wan didn't return to the dormitory. Instead, she headed straight to the entrance of the school. She had an appointment with Liu Binlai to watch a movie that afternoon. Jiang Yu and Lung Wan headed to the entrance of the school together. She also had an appointment with her buddy of 2 years, Lin Jie's childhood friend, Liang Jusi, to the comic exhibition in the afternoon. In truth, both He Tian and Yao had an appointment, but it was a little late. So, the two of them returned to their dormitory room to rest for a while before heading to a cafe near the academy with their textbooks. Yao said that she was here to revise, but after sitting down, she really put on her noise-canceling earphones and started to work on her questions. On the other hand, He Tian was holding onto her phone and chatting with her friends. Looking at Luo Ruoxin's expression, Yao didn't need to ask to know that she was chatting with Desolate Year. Less than half an hour later, He Tian suddenly reached out to take off Yao's earphones and said, Yao, I might have to leave you alone here. I'm going to the market to buy some groceries. I have a date with Year of Desolation to have hot pot tonight. Yao waved the brush in her hand, gesturing for her to leave. He Tian gave Yao a peck before leaving with the book exactly the way she brought it back. Yao put on her earphones, picked up her pen, and continued scribbling on the paper. Unknowingly, time passed by slowly. Chapter 9:23. Yao's pen suddenly froze on the spot. She stared at the cup of milk tea for 3 seconds before raising her head, only to see an unfamiliar man standing right beside the table she was leaning on. Yao frowned as she took off her earphones. Before she could ask, May I know who you are? The man had already flashed a radiant smile at Yao. Senior Yao, I'm Gao Hui. I'm a freshman from the computer science faculty. As he spoke, his face reddened slightly. He pointed to the cup of hot milk tea beside Yao's hand and said, Senior, the milk tea in your cup is already cold. Why don't you drink this hot one instead? To be honest, Yao had encountered such a scene many times in the past, but in the past year, she hadn't encountered such a situation very often. Initially, when she got together with Lin Jie, there were still quite a few male students in G University who kept sending her messages, hoping to woo her. But a year ago, there was a male student who pestered her so much that she even went all the way to the Lin family's old residence. Before she could go crazy from being pestered by that male student, her boyfriend, Lin Jie, was the first to go crazy from jealousy. After that, that male student pestered her once more and followed her to the Beijing World Hotel, where Lin Jie followed him to the washroom. As it was the men's washroom, Yao wasn't too sure what happened inside. But in the end, the male student was taken away by the police, and the reason was that Lin Jie said that the male student was harboring ill intentions toward him in the washroom. When the police arrived, they were rendered speechless by Lin Jie's words. However, Lin Jie continued with his argument. Harassing a woman was considered sexual harassment, but harassing a man wasn't. Thus, The police officers who had been rendered speechless by Lin Jiej could only impartially take the young man away to the police station to investigate the matter. Of course, the matter eventually reached the school, and even the school leaders were alerted. Even though no one knew the details of the matter, the male student had been avoiding Yao ever since then. He even warned all of the male students in G University that they could fall in love with anyone but Yao. After all, they couldn't afford to offend Lin Jiej. All in all, ever since that incident, Yao's surroundings had become a lot quieter. Senior? Gao Hui, who had rushed over to strike up a conversation with Yao, noticed that she wasn't saying a word, so he couldn't help but speak up once more. Yao hurriedly reined in her thoughts and thanked the man before taking out her wallet from her bag. "I'll be keeping the milk tea. Just take it that you bought it for me. Here, take the money." The boy shook his head. "Senior, I don't want money." As he spoke, he glanced at Yao's phone on the table before raising his finger and pointing at it lightly. "Senior, can I add you on WeChat?" Yao didn't respond to the male student's question. Instead, she raised her right hand to show the 8-digit diamond ring to the male student and asked, "Junior, do you know what this means?" I know, but I still want to be friends with you." How could this child be so stubborn? He already knew that she had a fiancé, yet he still refused to give up. Yao twirled the pin in her hand as she asked the male student, "Then, do you know what the first unspoken rule of entering G University is?" Chapter 924. These words were written by the man whom Lin Jiej had sent to the police station for sexual harassment back then. It had been more than a year since then, but every time Yao heard these words, she still couldn't help but burst into laughter. "So, Junior, are you sure that you still want to add my WeChat?" The man was already starting to give up, but after a moment of hesitation, he still mustered his courage and said, "Senior, I'm sure. It can't be, right? You're still unwilling to give up?" Could it be that she really had to use her trump card? Yao pondered for a moment before picking up her phone and sending a message to Lin Jiej. "Where are you?" Soon, Yao received Lin Jiej's reply. "I'll be there soon." Yao didn't reply to Lin Jiej's message. Instead, she opened up the conversation between the two of them and showed it to the man. "Junior, Lin Jiej will be here soon." Shortly after Yao said those words, another line of text appeared on her phone screen. Yao, I've already parked my car. I'm heading to the cafe now." As if frightened by something, the man raised his head to look at the street outside the window. A second later, he picked up the cup of milk tea in front of Yao and fled in a hurry without saying a word. Due to his hasty escape, the man nearly knocked into a chair. Looking at his fleeing silhouette, Yao couldn't help but burst into laughter. "What are you laughing at?" An elegant and pleasant voice suddenly sounded from behind Yao. She subconsciously wanted to turn around to take a look, but before she could do so, a warm, large hand had already placed itself on her head and rubbed it lightly, following which, the chair beside her was pulled back by a pair of beautiful hands, and the sound of the chair rubbing against the floor echoed softly as Lin Jiej sat down beside her. Upon seeing Lin Jiej, Yao shook her head and said, "It's nothing." Lin Jiej didn't say anything, but his eyes were filled with disbelief. "It's just that I thought of a saying earlier." Yao's eyes darted around for a moment before she leaned over to Lin Jiej's ear and whispered, "Mister, I don't want to knock into a wall anymore. I don't want to knock into your heart anymore." Hearing those words, Lin Jiej's mood immediately lightened up. Seeing that the look of disbelief on the man's face had disappeared without a trace, Yao picked up her brush and said, "Give me a moment. I'll finish the last few questions first before we leave." Yao paused for a moment as she recalled how Lin Jiej would give her the answer as soon as she saw the question. Before she could even think of an answer, he would immediately answer it. She turned to glare at Lin Jiej and said, "Right, you're not allowed to speak." Lin Jiej nodded his head in response, after which, Yao began to immerse herself in answering the question. Afraid that he would blurt out the answer after seeing the question, Lin Jiej looked around the room. There were quite a few males who unintentionally glanced in their direction, but Lin Jiej would mistake them for Yao, and he would glare at them with a deep frown. Then, The boys in the cafe seemed to be afraid that they would get into trouble. One by one, then another. Looking at the bawling coffeehouse owner, Yao couldn't help but feel sorry for him, so she decided to give up on answering the questions. She closed the paper and nudged Lin Jiej, saying, "Let's go, let's go. Let's head back to the old manor to meet Grandpa." At the same time, in the study on the first floor of the Lin family's old manor, Auntie Sun, who had been called in by Grandpa Lin, followed his instructions and closed the door before calling out to Grandpa Lin, "Old Mister." Grandpa Lin beckoned Auntie Sun over, and when Auntie Sun came closer, he asked, "How are the preparations going?" Chapter 9:25. Grandpa Lin beckoned Auntie Sun over. When Auntie Sun came closer, he asked, "How are the preparations going?" "Auntie Sun, everything is ready. Be it the old manor, the things in young master's room, or the things in young master's apartment. I've already tampered with them." Naturally, Grandpa Lin knew what Auntie Sun was referring to. Even though everything was going according to his plan, he still couldn't help but ask worriedly, "You didn't make any mistakes, did you?" "Auntie Sun, I didn't. I followed your instructions and inserted a needle in the most inconspicuous part of the packaging. Besides, old Mister, under normal circumstances, you wouldn't be in the mood to inspect it carefully when you're using it. Indeed, you're right. I've always remembered that brat Lin Jiej's ploy 2 years ago, and I've been enduring it for 2 whole years. I've been enduring it to the point where I'm about to go moldy. But now that Yao Yao is about to graduate, this period of time should be Yao Yao's ovulation period. If everything goes smoothly, I should be able to hear the good news from Yao Yao's womb during the spring festival." As Grandpa Lin spoke, he couldn't help but chuckle to himself. "Look at the words I've chosen. What do you think? Isn't it great? Auntie Sun, I'll leave it to you. Which word do you think is suitable for my great-grandson's name?" Auntie Sun leaned forward to take a look at the piece of paper that Grandpa Lin was pointing at. It was filled with black words. Even if there weren't 100 of them, there were at least 80 of them. It was just a name for the young master. So why did Grandpa Lin prepare so many words for it? Grandpa Lin stared at the words that he had painstakingly selected from the Xinhua dictionary over the past 2 years with a satisfied look on his face. Then, he noticed the troubled look on Auntie Sun's face, so he waved his hand in a show of benevolence. "Forget it. It's my fault. My question earlier was too difficult for you, so I'll assign you something simple to do instead. You can start preparing the baby's belongings now. Remember, you have to choose the best of everything. Also, Yao Yao and Jiej's wedding has to be pushed forward as well. Back when they were still in school, they refused to hold a wedding, but now that Yao Yao is about to graduate, we have to hold a wedding as soon as possible. Otherwise, others will say that Yao Yao is following Jiej without a proper title. We can suffer any injustice, but we can't let Yao Yao suffer. Also, remember to have the kitchen prepare some nutritious food every day and send it to Jiej. From now on, Yao Yao is no longer the same as before. You have to serve her carefully. Treat her as if she's 2, no, 3, no, 10 men. Old sir, don't worry. I've already remembered all of this. You've been telling me about it many times in the past 2 years. Auntie Sun, you're getting more and more outrageous. Are you saying that I'm nagging? No, no, no. Sir, how would I dare? I'm sure that you wouldn't dare to." As Grandpa Lin spoke, he repeated what he had said earlier once more before waving his hand and allowing Auntie Sun to leave. There was a slight traffic jam on the way back from the academy, so by the time they arrived, it was already 6:30. Chapter 9:26. Still worried, Yao went to ask Auntie Sun if Grandpa Lin was feeling unwell. Auntie Sun, who had accompanied Grandpa Lin to the backyard to play golf, knew that Grandpa Lin wanted nothing more than for his great-grandson to pop out of Yao's womb right now, so he was intentionally buying time for Lin Jiej and Yao. However, Auntie Sun didn't dare to say that. Grandpa Lin isn't feeling unwell. He's probably tired from playing golf in the afternoon. Hearing this answer, Yao felt relieved. Auntie Sun then asked, "Miss Shur, will you be staying with young Master Lin at the old manor tonight?" Yao turned to Lin Jiej, but Lin Jiej shook his head in response. In that instant, Auntie Sun couldn't help but feel impressed by old Mr. Lin. Sure enough, the older the ginger, the wiser the ginger. Old Mr. Lin knew that it wasn't guaranteed that he would succeed by messing around in the Lin family manor. So he sent Shi Yao to deliver some food to the Lin family manor on the pretext that the young master had just returned from his business trip. At the same time, she also tampered with the items in the young master's bedside cabinet. While Grandpa Lin was resting, Lin Jiej and Shi Yao didn't linger in the old manor for too long, so they returned to Lin Jiej's apartment. While Shi Yao and Lin Jiej had been together for 2 years, these 2 years felt no different from 2 months. Nothing had changed between them, and they were still as lovey-dovey as when they first got together. This made it so that no matter if it was Liu Benlai, Xia Shangzhou, or even Desolate Year and Liang Juxi, none of them were willing to have a meal alone with the two of them. Lin Jiej had been away for a week, and as the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. On the night of his return, he couldn't help but do some indescribable things. Xia Shangzhou had been working by Lin Jiai's side for 2.5 years now. Over the past 2.5 years, he rarely took any leave. Even when Lin Jiai was busy with work during the holidays, he would still work overtime with her. However, in the past few days, Xia Shangzhou had used up his annual leave. His younger sister was getting married, so he had to attend the wedding. Xia Shangzhou had 10 days of annual leave, and after his younger sister's wedding, he still had a week of leisure time. He had planned to accompany his parents for a week, but due to his younger sister's marriage, he didn't have a girlfriend at all. His parents grumbled about him from the moment he opened his eyes to the moment he closed his eyes at night, and Xia Shangzhou couldn't take it anymore. Eventually, he booked a ticket to a nearby city and decided to go on a solo vacation. Xia Shangzhou took the train. When he arrived, it was already midnight. He checked in at the hotel he had booked in advance, ordered takeout, and went to bed after filling his stomach. Because he was on vacation, he deliberately turned off the alarm that was always on. He thought he could sleep until he woke up naturally, but in the end, he received more than 10 calls in the morning. Special Assistant Xia, how do you brew the tea that President Lin wants? In the past, she would be fine when I made tea, but today, I've made it 18 times, and she can find fault with it every time. Special Assistant Xia, what does Boss Lin need to prepare to meet the client? It's not like I haven't gone with her before, but today, she kept saying that I didn't do this well and that well. Special Assistant Xia, when are you coming back? Our secretarial office can't hold on any longer. In the end, Xia Shangzhou's phone rang a second after he hung up. That's strange. Why is the she-devil's temper so weird today? Chapter 9:27. It was no wonder why the demoness was so furious today. It turned out that it was the anniversary of Qin Ting's death. The first year, on the anniversary of Qin Ting's death, Lin Jiai had gotten herself drunk at Little Junior's and Boss's singles party. The second year, on the anniversary of Qin Ting's death, Lin Jiai had gone to the bar alone and drank herself into oblivion. If not for the fact that the bartender had picked up his call and noticed that something was amiss, she would have probably been taken away by those men who harbored ill intentions that night. The third year, which was today, while Xia Shangzhou was deep in thought, his phone rang once more. He picked it up, and the new intern secretary was already crying. Assistant Xia, Boss Lin told me not to brew the tea properly, so I told her to scram later. Woo-woo-woo. Through the intern secretary's cries, Xia Shangzhou could also hear the sound of things being smashed and Lin Jiai's furious roars. While he couldn't hear what Lin Jiai was saying, he could sense that the scene before him was probably terrifying to the extreme. Assistant Xia, what should I do? I'm really at my wit's end. It's only been 2 hours, and Boss Lin has already smashed 2 desks. Hearing the intern secretary's words once more, Xia Shangzhou recovered from his daze and said, Little Qin, don't cry and don't enter the office. I'll book a flight back to Beijing right now. Before you return, I'll call someone over for you. As long as that person goes over, the demoness. No matter how bad Boss Lin's temper is, she'll be able to rein it in. The intern secretary was still crying, but she didn't forget to gossip. Assistant Lin, who is the person you're talking about? Xia Shangzhou. You'll know when you see him later. After hanging up the call, Xia Shangzhou immediately sent a distress message to Shi Yao. Little Junior, call Little Junior. However, the person who replied to his message was Lin Jiej. Little Junior is bathing. Xia Shangzhou. Bloody hell. Am I sending myself to be abused? Taking a deep breath, Xia Shangzhou decided to swallow his anger and said, "Boss, the handsome and rich boss, I would like to borrow little Junior for a moment. Is that possible?" Lin Jiej. Lin Jiej, do you want to die? No, no, no. Boss, you've misunderstood. What I mean is that I'm not borrowing little Junior on your behalf. I won't lend it either. I knew it would be like this. Xia Shangzhou was straightforward. Today is the anniversary of Qin Ting's death. The other side was silent for a while, and then Xia Shangzhou received a message. Got it. I'll bring Yao Yao over later. Xia Shangzhou replied with thank God emoji and then began to book the plane tickets. There were only first-class seats left on the earliest flight back to Beijing. The price is a little expensive. Xia Shangzhou gritted his teeth, entered the password, paid the amount, and then packed his things to rush to the airport. When Xia Shangzhou arrived in Beijing, he did not even return home. Instead, he dragged his suitcase and rushed to the Lin Enterprise building. By the time he arrived, it was already 1 in the afternoon. Lin Jiai was currently on her lunch break, and Lin Jiej and Shi Yao had already left. Upon seeing Zhang Xian, the people from the secretarial office reacted as if they had seen a living Buddha. They praised him while tossing the documents that Lin Jiai had requested in the afternoon to him before returning to their respective posts. Chapter 9:28. Just as Xia Shangzhou had expected, Lin Jiai had already woken up. She was seated at her desk with a deep frown on her face. Back when he first started his internship with Lin Jiai, he was really afraid of her. Every time he saw her, he would want to run away. But now, Xia Shangzhou was able to calmly place a cup of coffee in front of Lin Jiai and say, "Boss Lin, there's a video conference in 20 minutes. You can go and touch up your makeup now. I've already prepared the documents for the conference, and they're all here." Lin Jiai picked up the cup of coffee and took a sip. It was her favorite flavor. She flipped open the documents that Xia Shangzhou had prepared, and it was clear and concise. It was her favorite style. The fury in her eyes dissipated in an instant. "Aren't you on your annual leave?" My younger sister just got married, and my parents kept urging me to get married. I couldn't take it anymore, so I came back to work." Xia Shangzhou hid the fact that he was planning to go on a vacation, but before he could do so, he was called back to Beijing. Lin Jiai replied with an "oh" as she drank another half a cup of coffee before heading to the bathroom to touch up her makeup. Xia Shangzhou backed out of Lin Jiai's office to deal with the client meeting after the video conference. At 3:30 p.m., Lin Jiai's conference was over, and she had to meet the client. Xia Shangzhou had already prepared a car in advance, and he even left a pair of flats in the car so that Lin Jiai could return to the car after meeting the client. It would make her feet more comfortable in high heels. Since Xia Shangzhou had returned, it went without saying that he would be accompanying Lin Jiai to meet with the client. Before leaving the office, Xia Shangzhou took a look at the temperature of the night and noted that it was a little cold. So, he headed over to Lin Jiai's closet and took out a down jacket and a blanket, as well as a few heaters and water bottles. After which, Xia Shangzhou returned to his desk. While he was grabbing his phone and wallet, he didn't forget to open the drawer and grab a box of stomach medicine and hangover medicine. Lin Jiai was afraid of the cold, but she wanted to maintain her poise instead of warmth. She would often suffer from excruciating pain during those few days of the month, but she didn't learn from it. Her stomach wasn't very good, and she always liked to eat spicy food. Sometimes, she would suddenly have a stomachache, and then the stomach medicine would become a regular item in his desk drawer. As for the hangover medicine, as long as Lin Jiai was with him, he wouldn't allow her to drink alcohol. Even if she was forced to drink at a social event, the culprit would be him. As such, he usually prepared the hangover medicine for himself. However, today was different. It was the anniversary of Qin Ting's death, so there was no doubt that Lin Jiai would be drinking. Thus, he prepared some hangover medicine in advance so that she wouldn't suffer from a terrible hangover the next day. Xia Shangzhou had prepared everything he needed, so no matter how hot-tempered Lin Jiai was, she still managed to tame herself. It was almost 7:00 in the evening by the time he finished meeting the clients. Lin Jiai didn't have any social engagements today, or to be more precise, she wouldn't have any social engagements on this day every year. Xia Shangzhou knew that Lin Jiai would go for a drink after parting ways with him, so he took the initiative to suggest, "Boss Lin, since you don't have much on today, why don't you head to WIKS? It's a new bar opened by Liang Jusi, and I heard that it's quite a good bar. With everything under Xia Shangzhou's control, Lin Jai nodded her head and said, all right. It was still early, so there weren't many people at WIKS. Liang Jusi wasn't around either, but the waiter recognized Xia Shangzhou and Lin Jai, so he arranged the best and most secluded seats for them. Chapter 929. The two of them sat quietly on their respective seats, drinking their wine. After a long time, Lin Jai suddenly raised her head and asked Xia Shangzhou, navigator, how old are you? I'm a year older than boss. That means you're 2 years younger than me. Lin Jai's lips curled up into a light smile, but her eyes shone brilliantly. Wimpy brat. Wimpy brat? That's even worse than navigator. Hey, little brother, have you ever liked someone before? Xia Shangzhou. Little brother? That's even worse than wimpy brat. Xia Shangzhou fell silent for a moment before shaking his head. No. He used to think that little junior sister was his goddess, but that kind of feeling, let alone liking her, he couldn't even say that his heart was moved. Hearing Xia Shangzhou's reply, Lin Jai gulped down a huge cup of wine in disappointment. I thought that you already have someone you like. At least I'll be able to listen to your story. As she spoke, Lin Jai glanced at her wine glass and stroked it lightly with her fingertips. I once liked someone, and I liked him very, very much. I liked him so much that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. Xia Shangzhou knew that Lin Jai was talking about Qin Ting, but he feigned ignorance and asked, what happened after that? After that, he died. He died in a car accident 8 years ago. It was a car that fell off a cliff, and not even his bones were left behind. So that's how he died. Xia Shangzhou squeezed the wine cup in his hand. Boss Lin, my condolences. If he were still alive, he would surely wish for you to be happy. I was very happy. I thought that earning money would make me happy, so I've been earning money like a madman all these years. I thought that buying and buying would make me happy, so I've been working hard to buy and buy all these years. I'll only allow myself to be sad for one day, and that day is today. Of the 4 of them in room 501, Xia Shangzhou knew that he was the most clumsy one. He had no idea how he should console Lin Jai, so he pondered for a moment before saying, Boss Lin, you'll meet better people in the future. I meet good people every day. You see, there are so many people chasing after me. It's not like you don't know that they are all good people, but, do you know? Navigator, after he left, I never thought about getting married. I just wanted to spend the rest of my life alone. When Xia Shangzhou heard this, he smiled. Boss Lin, you won't be alone for the rest of your life. I'll be with you. Lin Jai thought that Xia Shangzhou was joking with her, so she chuckled softly. A moment later, she said, Navigator, even though those are just words of consolation, I still have to thank you for it. As she spoke, Lin Jai stared at the GPS and continued. I think that what your parents said is right. You're not young anymore, so it's about time for you to find a good girl, get into a good relationship, and live a good life. Xia Shangzhou said nothing and only smiled. Lin Jai poured herself another cup of wine and said, Navigator, I'll keep an eye out for you. I'll introduce you to some good girls when I meet them. Xia Shangzhou did not refuse. Thank you, he said. Lin Jai didn't say a word. Instead, she continued to pour cup after cup of wine down her throat. Xia Shangzhou didn't say anything else either. He knew that she would get drunk, so he tried his best to restrain himself. He wasn't looking at her. His eyes were fixed on the window, but her silhouette was reflected in the window. Chapter 930. Gazing at her silhouette, he muttered in his heart, No, I don't have a girl I like. I have someone I love. But the person I love, I'm not worthy of her. So, I'll accompany her forever. If she wants to die alone, I'll accompany her until the end of her life. Before 10 o'clock, Lin Jai was already dead drunk. Xia Shangzhou sent her home, and just like usual, he cleaned up the messy house before heading to the kitchen to cook a pot of porridge to keep it warm. After which, he sent a message to Lin Jai reminding her to drink it the next morning before hailing a cab back to his rented apartment. It was already 3 in the morning. Xia Shangzhou took a shower and laid on his bed. Just as he was about to sleep, His phone suddenly lit up. Picking it up, he saw that it was a message. Mr. Xia, I am really sincere in inviting you to jump ship to my company. If you are not satisfied with the annual salary I gave you last time of 10 million, then I can double it and give you the company's shares. I can also give you the right to speak in the company. Without any hesitation, Xia Shangzhou rejected the offer. There's no need for that. Thank you for your kindness. Mr. Xia, based on what I know, the salary that Boss Lin offers you is only average. Given your capabilities, it's a little overkill for you to stay by her side as her assistant. You've been by her side for so many years, but you can't even afford a house in Beijing. The salary I'm offering you is really acceptable. Why don't you state your conditions and I'll consider it? I don't have any conditions. I won't jump ship. After replying, Xia Shangzhou blocked the other party's message and put down his phone. Lying on the single bed in his rented apartment, he closed his eyes and fell asleep. After her final examinations, Shi Yao began looking for an internship. Ever since she was young, her dream was to become a teacher. Thus, the positions she applied for were all teachers. Finally, Shi Yao's internship was an English teacher at Ji University's affiliated high school. However, due to the approaching winter break, Shi Yao's internship was scheduled to be after the Spring Festival. After the Lantern Festival, it was almost time for Shi Yao to go to work. Having never lectured before, she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. So, before reporting to the academy, she used Lin Jiej as a guinea pig and attempted to conduct 2 classes. However, the results weren't too good. In the end, as she was lecturing, she ended up falling asleep with the students. Not long after the Spring Festival, spring arrived. After half a month of internship, Shi Yao was already able to handle the students with ease. She had a good personality, was beautiful, and taught the top class of the school, so she really didn't have to worry about anything. Instead, she was especially liked by the students. As such, Shi Yao also learned a lot about the affairs of the students' families. For example, Wang Xiaoning said that her mother was pregnant with a second child. For example, Zhang Xiao said that her father found her a stepmother and she got pregnant. For example, Xia Dingting said that her mother was pregnant again. Because it was her third child, she aborted it. Every day, when Shi Yao returned home after class, she would chat with Lin Jiej about school matters. As they chatted, she eventually came to a conclusion. There had been a lot of people getting pregnant recently. A second ago, she was lying on the sofa in Lin Jiej's embrace, munching on the grapes that he had stuffed into her mouth as she told him this conclusion. But a second later, she suddenly felt nauseous, and she abruptly leaped up from the sofa. Rushing to the bathroom, she began retching into the basin. Chapter 931. Shi Yao's series of reactions came too abruptly. Caught completely off guard, Lin Jiej only realized what was going on when he heard Shi Yao vomiting. He quickly got up and rushed to the washroom. Yao Yao, why did you suddenly vomit? Are you feeling unwell? After stopping her vomiting, she raised her head and shook her head at Lin Jiej through the mirror. She was just about to respond to him when another wave of nausea struck her, causing her to bend over and vomit once more. Lin Jiej hurriedly reached out to pat Shi Yao's back. Seeing that she wasn't vomiting anything at all, he couldn't help but frown and say, "This won't do. Let's go to the hospital." As he said those words, Lin Jiej pulled on Shi Yao's hand. Shi Yao resisted Lin Jiej's hand for a moment, and when the nausea subsided a little, she said, "There's no need to go through so much trouble. I'm fine. Perhaps it's because the food in the school canteen was a little oily, so I've been feeling a little nauseous ever since I got home. Did you eat something unclean? Or is it a stomach problem?" Lin Jiej asked. But in the end, he still insisted on his opinion. "No matter what, it's best to let the doctor take a look at you. I don't have a fever or diarrhea, so it's definitely not something I ate. My stomach doesn't hurt either, so it can't be a stomach problem. It's too troublesome to go to the hospital in the middle of the night. I still have an early class tomorrow, and I'll be wasting a lot of time if I have to go to the hospital." Shi Yao turned on the tap and filled herself with a cup of warm water to rinse her mouth. Putting aside vomiting, even the discomfort in her stomach had disappeared without a trace. Thus, she stood her ground and said, "Besides, look at me. I'm fine now, so there's really no need for us to make a trip to the hospital. Lin Jie was still a little worried, so he stared at Shi Yao and asked her a few more times. After confirming that she was really fine, he finally agreed to her request. But in the end, he still said, "Let's make things clear first. If you still feel unwell, you'll have to go to the hospital." Seeing that Lin Jie had agreed to her request, Shi Yao nodded her head vehemently and replied with a few times. After that, she washed her hands and returned to the sofa with Lin Jie to continue watching television. After dinner, she suddenly had a craving for grapes, so Lin Jie specially drove to a nearby supermarket to buy them. When Shi Yao came out of the bathroom, she looked at the grapes, and for some reason, she suddenly lost her appetite. All of a sudden, she felt like eating watermelon. It was fortunate that Auntie's son had brought a huge watermelon over a few days ago, so Lin Jie didn't have to head out in the middle of the night. Thus, he headed straight to the dining room to help Shi Yao cut the watermelon. She had been vomiting a little back, so after he cut the watermelon, Lin Jie prepared a cup of warm milk for her. By the time Lin Jie returned from the dining room with a tray of watermelon and milk, Shi Yao, who had been hugging a pillow and staring intently at the television just a moment ago, was already leaning against the sofa, fast asleep. Lin Jie didn't wake Shi Yao up. He carefully placed the things in his hands on the table before bending down to carry Shi Yao into the master bedroom. Lin and Lin Tu, Lin Jaibi, Yao, Yao, Don, Yao, and. Chapter 932. When she was at work, he would always send her messages, and occasionally, when he was free, they would talk on the phone. But lately, the frequency of her replying to his messages had been very slow, and the speed at which she would pick up his calls was also very slow. The only explanation she would give him was that she was sleepy, so she fell asleep on the table. She would always use this excuse to reply to him, causing him to think that she had found a new lover in school. 2 days ago, he had even disguised himself and sneaked over to her school to observe her. Only after confirming that she was really sleeping did he feel reassured and returned to the company to continue with his meeting. Speaking of which, it was really strange. In the past, she wouldn't even sleep at 1 or 2 in the evening, but for the past week, she would be so sleepy that she couldn't even open her eyes before 10. By 9 in the morning, he had already tidied up, but she was still lazing around in bed. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be anything wrong with Softbun's body. Before she started working, he had accompanied her for a full body checkup, and she seemed to be in perfect health. Could it be that Softbun was feeling extremely sleepy due to the arrival of spring? With this thought in mind, he carefully covered Shi Yao with the blanket again. Gazing at her sleeping face, he suddenly recalled that he had a client meeting the night before yesterday, so after sending her home, he had returned to the company to work overtime. By the time he returned, she was already asleep. Yesterday, at 9:30, he had received an overseas call, and by the time he hung up, she had already fallen asleep once more. Today, it would have been fine if she didn't count, but it had been quite a few days since he last greeted her. It was no wonder why he felt like something was missing recently. It turned out that he had been buying fewer condoms than usual. At this rate, wouldn't he end up malnourished? No, this won't do. I have to accompany Softbun to mark the student's homework tomorrow. After that, I have to coax Softbun to bed so that I can replenish her nutrients before she falls asleep. The next day, Shi Yao was still woken up by Lin Jie's voice, not by her alarm. Even though she had slept for nearly 10 hours, she still felt that she hadn't slept enough. However, the thought that she had to go to work soon made her perk up. She climbed out of bed and headed to the bathroom to wash up. While she was brushing her teeth, the nauseating sensation from the previous night resurfaced once more. Shi Yao retched into the wash basin, and when she finally recovered, a deep frown appeared on her forehead. What's wrong with me? I've been feeling nauseous since yesterday. It's already the 2nd day, but this feeling still hasn't disappeared. Could there really be something wrong with me? Yao Yao? Yao Yao. Chapter 933. After arriving at the entrance of G University's affiliated high school, Shi Yao got out of the car and watched as Lin Jie's car drove away before turning around to head back to school. But before she could make a move, someone suddenly called out to her, "Teacher Shi." Hearing the commotion, Shi Yao raised her head and saw her student, Zhang Xiao, hopping down from a red car and running toward her excitedly. Shi Yao shot Zhang Xiao a warm smile, and just as she was about to greet her, she suddenly caught sight of the person in the driver's seat through the lowered window of the red car, and the smile on her lips abruptly froze. She recognized that person. It was an old acquaintance. Even though it had been 2 years since they last met, Shi Yao could still easily recognize that the other party was her former schoolmate, Qiniran. Just like back when they were still in university, Qiniran still had her makeup done up exquisitely, but at this moment, it was more appropriate for her to wear heavy makeup. Both her wrists and her ears were adorned with sparkling jewels. She didn't seem to have expected to meet Shi Yao here either, and a look of surprise appeared on her face. However, Shi Yao didn't meet Qiniran's gaze for too long because Zhang Xiao had already walked up to her and intimately reached out to grab her hand. "Teacher Shi, good morning." Snapping out of her daze, Shi Yao lowered her head to look at Zhang Xiao and said, "Student Zhang Xiao, good morning." Seeing that Qiniran wasn't intending to greet her, Shi Yao naturally wouldn't take the initiative to greet Qiniran either. Thus, she pulled Zhang Xiao into the school. On the way to the classroom, Shi Yao couldn't help but ask Zhang Xiao, "Zhang Xiao, is the person who drove you here your relative?" "No." Zhang Xiao shook her head with a displeased look on her face. "Teacher Shi, she's the pregnant stepmother that my father found for me. I really hate her, and I don't agree to her becoming my stepmother, so my father doesn't dare to bring her home. In the past, she didn't even bother to pay attention to me, probably because my father is rich. After seeing how much weight I hold in my father's heart, she's been trying to curry favor with me like a madman lately, buying me clothes and sending me to school. But even so, I still don't like her, Teacher Shi. I know that life isn't easy for my father. My mother passed away after giving birth to me, so it's only a matter of time before my father finds a stepmother for me, but I don't want that woman to become my stepmother. I suspect that the child in her womb isn't my father's. They all think that I'm too young to understand anything, but the truth is that I know everything. Teacher Shi, do you know that I was there when that woman met my father? She was the woman of one of my uncles back then, and for some reason, she hooked up with my father. Teacher Shi, if only you were the stepmother that my father found for me. That way, I would be able to see you all the time. Teacher Shi, why did you find yourself a boyfriend so early in life?" Hearing those words, Shi Yao couldn't help but chuckle. If Lin Jie were to hear those words, he would surely be overwhelmed with jealousy. She reached out to stroke Zhang Xiao's head and said, "It's fine. Even after you graduate, you can still come to school to play with me." Hearing those words, Zhang Xiao immediately cheered up. "Teacher Shi, as long as you don't find me annoying, I'll come to play with you every day even after I graduate." Chapter 934. After Zhang Xiao returned to the classroom, Shi Yao headed to her office. Sitting in front of her desk, Shi Yao couldn't help but remark, "This world sure is full of coincidences at times." She had thought that regardless of whether it was Qiniran, Liang Mumu, or Han Jing, they were all in the past, never to appear in her life again. Who could have thought that Qiniran would actually get involved with her student? Based on Zhang Xiao's description, Qiniran probably didn't manage to find a decent job after graduation, so she ended up fooling around with some rich men. However, when she met Zhang Xiao's father, she began thinking that she could make use of her son's prestige to soar up the tree and become a phoenix. Unfortunately, no matter how good her plan was, she never expected Zhang Xiao's father to care so much about his daughter. Zhang Xiao didn't like her, so she couldn't rely on the child in her belly to successfully enter a wealthy family. In the past, Shi Yao wouldn't feel tired even if she had to attend 4 classes a day. But today, she had no idea what was wrong with her. It had only been a single class, but her legs were already turning into jelly, and she looked like she was going to faint at any moment. It wasn't easy for her to force herself to sit through the entire lesson, and by now, she could be said to be completely drained. Back in the office, she sat on the chair and did not want to move. It was fortunate that she didn't have any lessons in the morning, so after a short break, she flipped open her textbook and began writing her lesson plans. As she was writing, she suddenly felt nauseous once more. Unable to make it to the washroom in time, she could only grab the small trash can on the table and vomit into it. As she vomited, She could vaguely feel a throbbing pain in her abdomen. These signs were really too abnormal. While Shi Yao was deep in thought, she suddenly retched once more. The person sitting next to her was Teacher Li. He was an intern teacher who had just graduated just like her, but he was a guy. Seeing that she kept vomiting, he couldn't help but ask in concern, "Teacher Shi, why is your face so pale? Do you want to go to the school hospital?" Hearing those words, Zhang Laoshi, who was seated opposite Shi Yao, raised her head to look at Shi Yao. She was already a mother of two, so she was much calmer than Li Laoshi. "Shi Laoshi, when did you start vomiting so much? How many days have you been throwing up?" Shi Yao replied, "I started vomiting yesterday." Zhang Laoshi didn't say a word. Instead, he stood up and walked up to Shi Yao before asking softly, "What about your period? Are they here? If you didn't come, you look like you're pregnant." As Zhang Laoshi spoke, she glared at Teacher Li, who had come over to eavesdrop on her conversation with Shi Yao. "Why are you butting in on the topic of women?" Teacher Li, who had been scolded, sat up straight. Chapter 935. However, even if she had used contraceptives, it wasn't 100% effective. Could it be that she and Lin Jiej had encountered that extremely small chance of pregnancy? The more Shi Yao thought about it, the more uneasy she felt. This was especially so when she recalled how her lower abdomen was throbbing in pain while she was lecturing earlier. Feeling a little worried, she recalled that she didn't have any classes in the afternoon, so she applied for a leave of absence and listened to Zhang Laoshi's advice to head to the hospital for a checkup. Knowing that Lin Jiej had a meeting in the afternoon, Shi Yao didn't disturb him. Instead, she gave Lung Wan a call and had the latter pick her up from school before accompanying her to Beijing's largest maternity hospital. Registering, lining up, and a series of checkups. By the time Shi Yao received the results, it was already 3 in the afternoon. Just as Zhang Laoshi had said, she was really pregnant, and she had been pregnant for nearly 2 months now. The doctor in charge of her suggested that she go for an ultrasound, and by the time she received the results, it was already around 4 in the afternoon. After taking a look at the scan, the doctor told Shi Yao that everything was fine and reminded her to come back for another checkup in a month's time. By the time Shi Yao and Lung Wan walked out of the hospital, the spring breeze was already blowing in their faces, carrying the fragrance of freshly bloomed winter jasmine. Shi Yao's mind, which had been in a muddled state ever since she found out that she was pregnant, finally cleared up a little. She was really pregnant. Even if she had used contraceptives, the extremely small chance of pregnancy had really happened to her and Lin Jiej. Shi Yao felt that everything was so surreal that when Lung Wan opened the car door and called her in, she couldn't help but ask, "Wan, am I really pregnant?" As Lung Wan started the car, she shot a glance at Shi Yao. Recalling how young Shi Yao was and how shocked she was, she couldn't help but ask, "What do you plan to do with this child?" "What do you mean by plan?" Shi Yao asked Lung Wan in return. It was only then that she realized that Lung Wan was asking her such a question because her reaction had been too bizarre. Thus, she replied, "Of course we're going to give birth to the child. It's just a matter of time before Lin Jiej and I are going to have a child. Now that we suddenly have a child, we can't possibly abort it. I just find it a little inconceivable." Shi Yao paused for a moment before recalling that she hadn't shared this piece of good news with Lin Jiej yet. So, she took out her phone, intending to send Lin Jiej a message. But halfway through, she suddenly felt that it wouldn't be too exciting to tell him such an explosive piece of news through text. Thus, she turned to Lung Wan and said, "Wan, can you send me to Lin Jiej's office?" By the time Shi Yao arrived at Lin Jiej's office, it was around 5 in the morning. Lin Jiej was in the middle of a meeting, so Shi Yao didn't have anyone disturb him and headed straight to his office. Perhaps it was because she had been rushing around the hospital for too long that she fell asleep on Lin Jiej's sofa while waiting for him. By the time she woke up, she felt a tickling sensation on her ear. She frowned slightly before realizing that Lin Jiej was kissing her. Dodging Lin Jiej's kiss, she glanced out the window and saw that the sky had already darkened. Subconsciously, she asked, "What time is it?" "It's almost 7. As Lin Jiej replied. His lips pressed against her neck once more, and his hand even slipped under her clothes. Having been together with Lin Jiej for 2 years, Shi Yao naturally knew what he was up to. A slight frown appeared on her forehead as she subconsciously grabbed Lin Jiej's hand and said, "Lin Jiej, wait a moment. I have something to tell you." Chapter 936. Having been together with Lin Jiej for 2 years, Shi Yao naturally knew what he was up to. With a slight frown on her forehead, she subconsciously grabbed Lin Jiej's hand and said, "Lin Jiej, I have something to tell you." Lin Jiej kissed the corner of Shi Yao's lips as he muttered something inaudible. It didn't take long for him to extricate himself from her grasp and grow restless once more. Faced with Lin Jiej's perfunctory response, Shi Yao was a little displeased, and her tone grew a little heavier as she said, "Lin Jiej." Lin Jiej's actions didn't stop, but his lips moved away from Shi Yao a little as he said, "You talk about your stuff, and I'll do mine. We'll do it at the same time. Do ice cream balls at the same time?" But just as Lin Jiej was about to kiss her once more, Shi Yao suddenly reached out to hold his face back, preventing him from getting any closer. "Lin Jiej, I really have something very serious to tell you." Despite being stopped by her, Lin Jiej didn't show the slightest hint of anger. Instead, he grabbed her hand and began kissing it. At the same time, his other hand was already stripping off her clothes with greater fervor. "Lin Jiej, I'm really going to get angry if you continue like this." Yao, I was wrong." Lin Jiej admitted his mistake, but his body had already pinned Shi Yao beneath him. "Lin Jiej." Shi Yao panicked. She struggled with all her might, but there was no way she could withstand Lin Jiej's strength. In the end, she could only threaten him. "Lin Jiej, make your choice. Do you want to be tied to the bed or locked in the bathroom?" "Lin Jiej, I'm telling you, we're going to have another member in our family." Seeing that her threats were ineffective, Shi Yao decided to throw out her trump card. "Oh," Lin Jiej replied nonchalantly. Pressing down on the struggling Shi Yao, he skillfully took off her clothes before placing his lips on her fair back. With a seductive tone, he asked, Yao, do you want to keep a dog or a cat?" Was it really that hard to understand what she meant earlier? He actually thought that she was going to have a pet when she said that she was going to have another member. Shi Yao frowned as she glanced at the man whose eyes were filled with lust. A thought suddenly came to her mind, and she turned around, hooked her arms around his neck, and winked at him. With a seductive tone, she asked, "Why don't you take a guess?" Lin Jiej had been missing Shi Yao a lot lately, and seeing her in such a state made his heart itch even more. He lowered his head and kissed Shi Yao's neck and chest. "No matter what you raise, I'll always support you." "Really?" A hint of delight could be seen on Shi Yao's face as she asked Lin Jiej. After which, her slender fingers fell on Lin Jiej's belt, and with a light tug, she undid his belt. They had been together for 2 years. She naturally knew where he couldn't stand it the most, so she focused on that area. She deliberately made her movements very slow, seductive, and rhythmic, teasing him until his mouth was dry and his body was on fire. Lin Jiej really couldn't stand the torment of being in heaven one moment and then hell the next. He grabbed her hand and couldn't wait to dive straight into the main topic. However, just as he was about to make his move, the seductive woman suddenly said calmly, "We're going to have another member in our family. It's not a cat or a dog, but your greatest love rival in history, a baby." Lin Jiej's movements didn't stop there. Shi Yao wasn't in a hurry either. She continued speaking leisurely. "To put it simply, I'm pregnant." Chapter 937. As if someone had sealed Lin Jiej's acupoints, he suddenly froze on the spot. 3 seconds later, he raised his head to look at Shi Yao and said, Yao, this joke isn't funny at all. Look at me, I'm about to go soft from fear." As he spoke, he lowered his head to kiss Shi Yao once more. However, before he could make a move, the prepared Shi Yao had already taken out the test report from her bag and flung it at Lin Jiej's face. "Look at it yourself." Lin Jiej touched his stinging cheek as he lowered his head to look at the few pieces of paper before him. With a perplexed look on his face, he reached out to pick them up one by one. After reading the first report, a slight frown appeared on his forehead. After reading the second report, The frown on his forehead deepened even further. After reading the third report, a deep frown appeared between his brows. After reading the fourth report, just as he had said, his heart had completely gone soft. Looking at the images before her, Shi Yao pushed Lin Jie away in satisfaction. She sat up and tidied up her clothes before admiring the petrified look on Lin Jie's face, waiting for him to come back to his senses. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 60 seconds. When Shi Yao counted down to 70, Lin Jie looked at the final report in his hands and blinked his eyes. He blinked his eyes several times before staring at the report with a stiff expression for a few more seconds. Finally, he raised his head to look at Shi Yao and said, "Yao Yao, you're getting more and more mischievous. Your jokes are getting bigger and bigger. Tell me honestly, how much money did you spend on these fake reports?" "Forge your head." Without any hesitation, Shi Yao kicked Lin Jie's knee and said, "Lin Jie, what do you mean by this? Are you going to go back on your word with Little Apple?" Lin Jie groaned in pain. He opened his innocent eyes to look at Shi Yao and asked in bewilderment, "Little Apple?" "That's right. I really wanted to eat an apple earlier, so I named the child in my stomach Little Apple." Lin Jie. The child already had a nickname? Seeing that Lin Jie wasn't speaking, Shi Yao spoke up once more. "Lin Jie, why aren't you speaking? Do you not welcome little glutinous dumpling?" Lin Jie. This time, before he could respond, Shi Yao had already spoken up. "I was craving glutinous rice dumplings again, so I decided to change the baby's nickname to Little Glutinous Rice Dumpling." Lin Jie. This name sure changes fast. I can't keep up with it at all. What should I do? Lin Jie, why aren't you saying anything? Don't tell me you think Little Milk Tea isn't your child? Little Milk Tea? In the blink of an eye, she wanted to drink milk tea again, so she changed the name to Little Milk Tea? This time, Lin Jie didn't dare to wait for Shi Yao to speak up. He quickly replied, "No." For some reason, he felt as if he was dreaming. He pinched his thigh, and when he felt a piercing pain, he turned to Shi Yao and asked with a look of disbelief, "Yao Yao, are these test results real?" Shi Yao nodded and replied with on. Finally, she had heard something that sounded reasonable to her. "So, Yao Yao, are you really pregnant? I'm going to be a father." Chapter 938. What? Shi Yao raised her head and glared at Lin Jie. Lin Jie realized that he had let the cat out of the bag, so he quickly corrected himself. "I said it was too late. I knew it too late. I should have received the good news as soon as I returned to the office." Hearing those words, Shi Yao's expression softened. Lin Jie heaved a sigh of relief. It was fortunate that he had reacted quickly enough. If Softbun had known what she had said earlier, he probably wouldn't even be able to continue chatting with her under the blanket anymore. Just yesterday, he was still thinking that he had been suffering from malnutrition recently, and he needed to nourish himself today. Yet, such a shocking piece of news had suddenly fallen upon him. The heavens must be trying to make life difficult for him. Putting aside malnutrition, he might not even be able to nourish himself in the near future. Softbun was right. The child in her womb was the greatest love rival in history. No matter how skilled he was at pinching peach blossoms, even if he had 100 guts, no, 1,000 guts, there was no way he would dare to pinch this peach blossom. He had only been together with Softbun for 2 years, and they hadn't even had enough of their time together yet. How did she get pregnant? Was it easy for him to fall in love? Why did he have to go through so many twists and turns? Also, what were the nicknames of the child in her womb? Little Apple, Little Milk Tea, Little Glutinous Dumpling, or Little Light Bulb? No, it should be Blinding Big Light Bulb. Looking at Lin Jie's ever-changing expression, Shi Yao couldn't help but feel that he wasn't moved or excited. So, she stretched out her hand and waved it in front of his face. "Lin Jie, why do I feel like you're unhappy?" Of course he was unhappy. There was suddenly a formidable rival who wanted to snatch his wife away from him, and it was a rival that he had to support with his own money. It would be a wonder if he was happy. However, Lin Jie didn't dare to speak the truth. He shook his head vehemently. "How could that be? I'm very happy. I'm going to be a father soon. Just thinking about it feels like a dream." As he said those words, Lin Jiej felt as if his heart was bleeding. Perhaps it was due to his guilty conscience, but he was afraid that Shi Yao would see through his act. So he quickly changed the topic. Yao Yao, let's discuss our marriage. Even though he didn't intend to have a child, he couldn't allow Softbun to abort the child out of the blue. After all, an abortion was harmful to the body, and he couldn't do something like that. Besides, they were going to get married sooner or later. He had planned to hold the wedding after she had graduated, but she was pregnant now. If they didn't hold the wedding in a few months later, it would become a huge problem. If they didn't hold the wedding, others would gossip about it. Lin Jiej, they and Soft. With such, Yao Lin, Yao, we have the Yao, I, and in you, I Lin. We should hold the wedding. Lin, if and you will your wedding soon. As he spoke, he picked up his phone and gave his grandfather a call. Lin said, and after hanging up the phone, old Master Lin, who was sitting in front of the television, could not stop smiling. When Annie's son brought the fruits over to Grandpa Lin, she took a look at the television. The main character in the television was critically ill, and a bunch of people were bawling their eyes out. It wasn't funny at all, but wasn't it a little too bizarre for Grandpa Lin to be laughing like that? Perplexed, Annie's son couldn't help but take a few more glances at old Mr. Lin. Noticing her gaze, old Mr. Lin chuckled as he picked up a grape and stuffed it into his mouth. Annie's son, are you going to ask me why I'm so happy? Before Annie's son could say anything, old Mr. Lin had already burst into laughter once more. Annie's son, don't look at me. Just look at me, and I'll never tell you that I have a great-grandson. Chapter 939. Annie's son, you didn't want to tell me, but you couldn't control yourself and spilled the beans. Annie's son, congratulations, old mister. You're finally going to have a great-grandson soon. Upon hearing those words, a deep frown appeared on Grandpa Lin's forehead. He stared at Auntie's son in bewilderment and asked curiously, how did you know that I have a great-grandson? Auntie's son, old mister, you said it yourself? Hearing those words, Grandpa Lin suddenly realized that he had accidentally spilled the beans in his excitement. In an instant, he glared at Auntie's son in displeasure, and like a child, he spat out, Auntie's son, how can you do this to me? You're trying to get my secret. Auntie's son, she didn't say anything at all earlier. All she did was look at him a little longer, and he said it himself. Grandpa Lin quickly waved his hands with a forgiving look. Forget it. Seeing that Yao Yao is pregnant, I won't hold it against you anymore. Auntie's son felt aggrieved, but she could only say, thank you, old mister. Grandpa Lin picked up the teacup on the table and slowly drank half of it. Even though she got pregnant 2 months later than I expected, it's good that she's pregnant. As he spoke, old Master Lin couldn't help but ridicule his grandson. There must be something wrong with that brat. If it wasn't for him, would I have waited from November last year to May this year before hearing the good news of Yao Yao's pregnancy? Annie's son couldn't help but defend Lin Jiej. Old mister, pregnancy isn't something that young master can decide alone. What do you mean by that? Are you saying that there's something wrong with Yao Yao? Let me tell you, that's impossible. There's definitely something wrong with Jiej and Yao Yao. Grandpa Lin glared at Annie's son furiously. Annie's son, that wasn't what she meant. She was just feeling sorry for young Master Lin. The old man was growing more and more fond of Miss Shi, to the point where he couldn't even speak carelessly. Auntie's son hurriedly explained, old mister, how could I dare to say that there's something wrong with Miss Shi? I just think that you're being too biased toward Miss Shi. Those who don't know might even think that Miss Shi is your biological granddaughter and the young master is your grandson-in-law, old Mr. Lin. If Yao Yao is really my granddaughter, I definitely won't let her marry that brat. Annie's son. All right, there was nothing she could do. She could only choose to sympathize with the young master for a minute. Auntie's son. Old sir, if young master were to hear these words of yours, he would surely feel sad. He would think that his existence in your heart is to marry Miss Shi, old Master Lin. It's not all about marrying Yao Yao. Hearing those words, Auntie's son couldn't help but feel gratified for Lin Jiej. At the end of the day, he was still a beloved grandson. Old Master Lin. And getting Yao Yao pregnant. Auntie Sun was rendered speechless. If Auntie Sun were to stay any longer, she was afraid that she'd die of heartache. Thus, she quickly found an excuse to leave and said, "Old mister, I'll head to the kitchen to take a look. I'm still cooking soup." Old Master Lin waved his hand and said, "Go on." Just as Auntie Sun was about to turn around, Old Master Lin suddenly called out to her, "Right, I want you to keep Yao Yao's pregnancy a secret. Don't let anyone know about it." Auntie Sun, "Yes, Old Master." Chapter 940. Auntie Sun subconsciously turned around and saw Grandpa Lin talking on the phone with a proud look on his face. "That's for sure. Putting aside treating you to a drink, you must definitely come to my granddaughter-in-law's wedding in a few days' time." "All right, that's a promise then." After Old Master Lin hung up, he did not put down his phone. Instead, he stared at it for a while before making another call. "Old Shin, didn't you say that you wanted to visit me when you had the time? Of course I miss you, or else why would I call you? I really have some good news to tell you. My granddaughter-in-law is pregnant. Where's your son? He's almost 40, right? Is he still unwilling to get married? Indeed, the two of us are around the same age. My great-grandson is about to come out, but your grandson isn't even around. Old Xia, what have you been busy with recently? What about in Hainan? Me? I'm not as fortunate as you to be able to go on a vacation so easily. I can't leave." "Why can't I leave?" "Because my granddaughter-in-law is pregnant." "Old Zhang, are you still playing cards? It's not good for your health." "Me? I don't have time to play cards with you guys recently." "Why?" "Because my granddaughter-in-law is pregnant." "Brother Liu." Auntie Sun couldn't bear to look at the sight before her, so she quickly turned her head away and walked into the kitchen silently. "Who was the one who told me to keep it a secret?" Yet, as if wanting to announce it to the world, she called all of her old friends and told them that young Mistress Shi was pregnant. When Auntie Sun came out to call Grandpa Lin for dinner, he was still on the phone. "Gunan, what are you and Xiaoyang doing? Why didn't you come to visit me? Did you come to visit me yesterday? Yesterday is yesterday, and today is today. Did you come to visit me today? Forget it. On account of Yao Yao's pregnancy, I'll forgive you and Xiaoyang. Gu Bei, are you overseas with Wan Huan? Is the company so important? Is it more important than Yao Yao? Forget it. On account of Yao Yao's pregnancy, I'll reluctantly accept the two of you returning to China after you're done with your work. Jai, I'm your grandfather. Of course I'm calling you because I miss you. Do you miss me too? I don't believe you. I knew that you were just coaxing me, but on account of Yao Yao's pregnancy, I'll take it as believing you this time." Auntie Sun was rendered speechless for a long time. Old Master Lin had been on the phone the entire time she had been busy in the kitchen. Was the phone bill enough? While Auntie Sun was still deep in thought, Grandpa Lin abruptly hung up the call with Lin Jai. He turned to Auntie Sun and said, "Can you help me pay my phone bill later? I just received a text notification saying that I have less than 10 renminbi left." "Yes," Auntie Sun hurriedly replied before continuing, "Old sir, dinner is ready. Please eat it while it's hot." Old Master Lin sighed and sat on the sofa to make another call. Then, he got up and entered the dining room. Old Mr. Lin was getting on in years, and his taste buds were getting lighter and lighter. The fish stewed by Chef Xiaosong was a little salty to old Mr. Lin. As he ate, he reminded Xiaosong, "Next time, make the fish lighter." Xiaosong hurriedly walked over and wanted to take the fish away. "Old sir, do you want me to make you another one?" Chapter 941. Even though Lin Jiej harbored a deep grudge toward the fetus in Shi Yao's womb, after hanging up the call with his grandfather, he noticed that Shi Yao was only wearing a jacket. So, he couldn't help but shout for her to wait for a moment. Then, he headed into the resting room, took out a scarf that he usually used in winter, and wrapped it around Shi Yao's neck. Even though it's spring right now, it's still a little chilly at night. Try not to get exposed to the wind lest you catch a cold. If that happens, you won't be able to take your medicine. After saying those words, Lin Jiej took another look at Shi Yao and noticed that she was wearing a pair of 5-centimeter high heels. He couldn't help but frown as he said, "From today onward, you can't wear heels anymore. It'll be terrible if you fall." As he said those words, Lin Jiej held Shi Yao's hand and took 2 steps out of the room. However, he still couldn't help but feel a little worried, so he decided to support her instead. Seeing how cautious Lin Jiej was, Yao couldn't help but say, "Lin Jiej, I'm not that delicate." Even if you're not that delicate, you still have to be treated as such. While they were speaking, the elevator that Lin Jiej and Yao boarded stopped on the 6th floor. The door opened, and a man was standing at the entrance of the elevator. He reeked of cigarette smoke. Lin Jiej frowned slightly. Just as the man was about to enter the elevator, he reached out to stop him and said, "I'm sorry, but can I trouble you to take the elevator with me?" Yao looked at Lin Jiej in bewilderment. Just as she was about to ask Lin Jiej why he was doing this, Lin Jiej suddenly turned to look at the elevator entrance with a stern expression. Just like Yao, the perplexed man spoke up once more. "Smoking is harmful to one's health. You should know this, right? Secondhand smoke is even more harmful to one's body. You should know this as well, right? If you didn't, I've already told you about it, so you should already know. Since you do, you should take care of the pregnant lady and not come in." Hearing those words, Yao finally understood Lin Jiej's intentions. She tugged on Lin Jiej's clothes in an attempt to stop him from going overboard. Lin Jiej, at the same time. The man standing at the entrance of the elevator also spoke up, "Sir, I'm not smoking." Ignoring Yao's actions and the man's words, Lin Jiej persisted in his opinion. With a straight face, he looked at the man who was staring at him as if he was a lunatic and spoke with conviction. "It's true that you're not smoking, but there's the smell of cigarettes on you. It's a pity that the smell of cigarettes is so strong. If you were to come in, what would happen to my fiancée? What if it affected the child in her belly? You can shoulder such a responsibility." Before Lin Jiej could finish his words, the man standing outside the elevator had already reached out to press the close button, and the elevator doors slowly closed, silencing Lin Jiej's righteous words. As the elevator continued descending, Yao expressed her opinion on Lin Jiej's earlier actions. "Lin Jiej, your actions earlier were a little too exaggerated. Did I? I don't think it was exaggerated at all. The stench on him was so strong. What if he choked on you and the child in your belly?" Lin Jiej had always adhered to the 3 obediences and 4 virtues. When Soft Bun went out, he had to obey her orders. When Soft Bun was wrong, he had to obey her blindly. When Soft Bun put on makeup, he had to obey her generosity. When Soft Bun was angry, he had to obey her. And when Soft Bun's birthday was remembered. Chapter 942. In Yao's eyes, Lin Jiej's so-called restraint was only getting worse. Be it getting into or out of the car or walking on foot, Lin Jiej was treating her as if she was a queen in his harem, carefully supporting her, afraid that she might trip and fall. Whenever there were too many people around, Lin Jiej would pull her into his embrace to protect her. There were even some people who tried to get too close to her, but even when they were still a meter away from each other, he would warn them to be careful of pregnant women. This made it so that no one was able to get within a 2-meter radius of Yao. Yao suddenly felt like eating Cantonese cuisine, so Lin Jiej brought her to the best Cantonese restaurant in Beijing. Along the way, he drove very carefully, and when he was still 50 meters away from the car ahead, he would step on the brakes. But that wasn't all. Even when they arrived at the entrance of the Cantonese restaurant, he still refused to let her get out of the car. Instead, he ran into the restaurant and checked the route she would take to ensure that there were no watermarks on the ground. Only after confirming that there were no slippery spots on the ground did he run to the car and carefully help her out of the car before escorting her into the suite. After taking a seat and ordering the dishes, Yao wanted to wash her hands, but Lin Jiej stopped her. Using the excuse that there was water in the washroom and that she might fall, he had a waiter buy a wash basin from the supermarket next door. Then, he personally filled it with water and brought it over to Yao to help her wash her hands. Lin Jiej wasn't tired at all, but Yao was on the verge of going insane. She couldn't help but accuse Lin Jiej of lying to her. He said that he would control himself, but he didn't. Lin Jiej blinked at Yao innocently and said, Yao, you're wrongly accusing me. I'm really trying my best to control myself. If not for the fact that I respect your opinion, I would have closed off the entire road that we're driving on. I even wanted to book this entire restaurant so that you're the only one enjoying this meal. I even wanted to hire a few security guards to surround you from all directions to prevent others from approaching. At the end of his words, Shi Yao felt her head throbbing in pain. All right, that's enough. Lin Jie obediently shut his mouth and took out a napkin to wipe Shi Yao's hands clean. After which, he used a cloth to dry up the water droplets on the floor before sitting down in front of Shi Yao and serving her meal. He was really serving her. He was serving her even better than the emperor in the back palace. Throughout the entire process, Shi Yao didn't need to move her chopsticks at all. All she needed to do was to move her eyeballs. When she looked at the dish, Lin Jie would feed it to her mouth, and when she frowned at the dish, he would immediately move it far away. By the end of the meal, Lin Jie had a radiant smile on his face, as if nothing had happened at all. However, Shi Yao couldn't help but feel exhausted on his behalf. On his way home, the roads were extremely smooth, but Lin Jie maintained the slowest speed he could muster. Shi Yao asked anxiously, Lin Jie, why aren't you going down to push the cart? If it wasn't for the fact that I can't move it, I really would have done so. Lin Jie consoled Shi Yao as he spoke. Yao, don't panic. Let's walk slowly. It'll be safer this way. When they reached home, Shi Yao thought that it was finally over, so she wanted to take a bath and rest. However, Lin Jie insisted on accompanying her throughout the entire process. Suppressing the urge to pummel Lin Jie, Shi Yao waved her hand at him and said, I'll bathe later. I suddenly feel like drinking yogurt. I'll get it for you. Chapter 943. After Shi Yao was done bathing and changing into her pajamas, she let Lin Jie into her bedroom. She was indeed a little tired, so she lay down on the bed and closed her eyes. Lin Jie didn't disturb her. Instead, he stayed by her side and accompanied her to sleep. Not too long later, Shi Yao fell into a deep sleep. It was still early, so Lin Jie didn't feel sleepy at all. But in such a quiet bedroom, looking at Shi Yao, who was no different from usual, his eyes couldn't help but soften. The scene from 2 years ago when they first got together was still vivid in his mind, as if it had just happened. In the blink of an eye, she was pregnant with his child. Life was truly a wondrous journey. If you met the right person, every day, every minute, and every second of your life would be filled with surprises. In his days, Lin Jie's hand uncontrollably rose up and landed lightly on Shi Yao's abdomen. Her waist was still as slender and light as ever. He found it hard to believe that their child had already been silently born from within. He had to admit that he didn't have any feelings toward the sudden appearance of a child, but he loved this child because the child was hers. Lin Jie didn't know how long he had been staring at Shi Yao silently for when his phone suddenly lit up. He took out his phone and took a look. It was a message from Lu Binlai. Boss, do you want to come out for a drink? Had it been in the past, Lin Jie would have rejected Lu Binlai's invitation unless Shi Yao came along. However, Shi Yao was already asleep, and he didn't feel sleepy at all. Thus, he agreed to it. By the time Lin Jie arrived, Xia Shangzhou and Lu Binlai were already drinking. When they saw him, they raised their heads in bewilderment and looked behind him. Seeing that the person they were looking for wasn't there, they couldn't help but ask, Boss, where's little Junior? Lin Jie replied nonchalantly, She's resting, before taking a seat. Lu Binlai was drinking real wine, but Xia Shangzhou was drinking Sprite. He couldn't help but frown. Lu Binlai understood what Lin Jie was trying to say. Boss, are you thinking that old Xia is really boring? Every time we come out for a drink, he's always drinking Sprite. Lin Jie nodded his head in agreement before pouring himself half a glass of wine. Xia Shangzhou, it's not that I don't want to drink, but I can't. Who knows when Boss Lin will call me to drive him to do something? Lu Binlai raised his wine glass and clinked it against Lin Jie as he muttered under his breath. You always say the same thing. Old Xia. I can already recite it backwards. It's not that I want to nag at you, but we're graduates of G University, and yet, you're still stuck as a special assistant. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? It's not like Boss hasn't told you that if you need anything, you can just ask. I just don't get it. Are you really that afraid of Boss's sister? Feng, and that you Xia Shangzhou. No, it has nothing to do with fear. It's the contract. I signed the contract back then, so I have to fulfill it. This is a matter of integrity, Lin Jiej and Xia Yao said. He spr Yao, she didn't moo. And Yao, he away, at today, and spr and Xia and Yao and Lin. Yao, Xia, he. Chapter 944. Lu Binlai. What's bothering you? Xia Shangzhou. Did you get into an argument with little Junior? How could that be? Lin Jiej replied as he took another sip of wine. Maybe it's because I'm going to be a father, so I'm feeling vexed. Lu Binlai. How shameless. Xia Shangzhou tilted his head to the side. In the end, this was still a public display of affection. Even though Lu Binlai and Xia Shangzhou were dealt a heavy blow, they still managed to quickly adjust their emotions and congratulate Lin Jiej. After putting down his wine cup, Lu Binlai couldn't help but ask, since little Junior is pregnant, is your marriage going to be held soon? Lin Jiej replied with an before replying, it should be next month. Lu Binlai and Xia Shangzhou congratulated each other once more. Following which, Xia Shangzhou, who hadn't drunk any wine at all, suddenly exclaimed, I always thought that Song Chaoshi would be the first to get married, and eldest would be the last to get married. But who would have thought that eldest would be the first to get married? I'm guessing that after eldest gets married, it'll be Song Chaoshi's turn, and then it'll be you, old Lu. At this point, Xia Shangzhou couldn't help but ask Lu Binlai curiously. Speaking of which, old Lu, Junior Lung Wan is going to graduate soon. Aren't you going to propose to her? It would have been better if he hadn't mentioned Lung Wan, but the mention of Lung Wan made Lu Binlai, who was in a good mood a moment ago, tighten his grip around the wine cup in his hand. His eyelids were lowered, so that no one noticed his abnormal behavior. After pouring the wine into his mouth, he raised his head and looked at Xia Shangzhou with a smile. Of course I'm going to propose to her. After saying those words, Lu Binlai's eyelids drooped down once more. As if he had encountered something difficult to understand, he gulped down another cup of wine before turning to Xia Shangzhou and asking, Old Xia, what about you? Aren't you going to find a girlfriend? Of course I'll find a girlfriend, Xia Shangzhou replied calmly, not revealing the slightest hint that he already had someone he liked. But it's still up to fate. Despite hearing those words, Lin Jiej remained silent. He raised his wineglass and took a sip, indicating that he agreed with the other party's words. Lu Binlai had ordered quite a lot of beer, but most of it had ended up in his stomach. He wasn't drunk, but he was a little tipsy. He stared at Lin Jiej and Xia Shangzhou, and there were a few times when he opened his mouth to ask them something, but he found himself unable to do so. It was only after he gulped down another bottle of beer that he finally managed to speak his mind. There's a brother in my company who has a girlfriend for quite some time now. However, putting aside doing anything intimate with her, she won't even kiss, hug, or hold his hand. What do you think is the reason behind this? Xia Shangzhou took a big gulp of Sprite as if he was drinking hard liquor. Do you even need to ask? It must be that the woman doesn't like the man. Lu Binlai's fingertips trembled and wine spilled out. Without saying a word, he turned to Lin Jiej. Meeting Zhang Xian's gaze, Lin Jiej shook his head and replied, I'm not too sure, but old Xia's words do make sense. Lu Binlai fell silent for a moment before a smile suddenly appeared on his face. Perhaps. As if he hadn't said anything at all, he gestured for Lin Jiej and Xia Shangzhou to continue drinking. Lin Jiej was worried about Shi Yao's pregnancy, so he left at 11 o'clock. Not too long after Lu Binlai left, Xia Shangzhou received a call from Lin Jiai, saying that she wanted to have mala soup in the middle of the night. Lu Binlai was the only one left in the suite. He stared out the window for a while before calling for a waiter to help him give Lung Wan a call. In less than 20 minutes, Lung Wan appeared in the suite. Lu Binlai was slumped on the table, completely motionless with a drunken look on his face. Lung Wan walked up to him and called his name softly, but she didn't reach out to touch him at all. In the end, Lu Binlai was the one who raised his head and looked at Lung Wan with a drunken look in his eyes, as if he couldn't tell who was who. It took him a long while before he finally called out, Wan, why did you drink so much? I'll get the waiter to help you into the car so that I can send you home. As she spoke, Lung Wan stood up and walked out of the suite to call for the waiter. Hearing those words, Lu Binlei's fingers silently clenched into fists. I'm already drunk. She can just casually help me up, but she's not even willing to do that? He stared at Lung Wan's silhouette for a moment, and just as she was about to leave, he suddenly reached out and grabbed her wrist. His touch struck her like a bolt of lightning, causing her to lose her usual composure. She struggled desperately to break free, but Lu Binlei's grip on her hand only grew tighter and tighter. In fact, he even lowered his head to approach her face. Chapter 945. Lung Wan looked as if she had just been given a huge fright. She struggled even more furiously than before, and even her body began to tremble uncontrollably. As Lu Binlei's face inched closer and closer, her body trembled even more violently. She tried her best to restrain herself from speaking, but very pleading words escaped from her lips. Let me go. Please let me go. Let me go. Lu Binlei's actions halted for a moment, as if he was about to stop. But in just 2 short seconds, he seemed to have made up his mind about something, and he lowered his head once more. His lips inched closer and closer to hers, and she could even feel his breath. In that instant, the man before her didn't feel like the Lu Binlei she knew. Instead, he felt like a man-eating beast in the darkness of the night. Lung Wan was so scared that tears began trickling down the corners of her eyes. The panicked words that came out of her mouth began to change, and eventually, they turned into a shriek. It was true that he liked her, and he couldn't bear to part with her. Even though he had made up his mind, he still couldn't bring himself to do it. Just when he was just a centimeter away from her lips, Lu Binlei suddenly stopped. He opened his eyes, only to see her tear-stained face, as well as the look of rejection, disgust, hatred, and fear on her face. Rejection, disgust, hatred. Lu Binlei stared at her for a moment, but all of a sudden, all of his strength seemed to have left him. His grip on her wrist abruptly disappeared. She easily broke free from him, as if he was a dreadful beast. She took a few steps back, widening the distance between the two of them. Only then did she stop. She didn't even look at him. Instead, she hugged her arms and leaned against the wall, trembling uncontrollably. Seeing her in such a state made his heart ache. Lu Binlei subconsciously averted his gaze. He could clearly hear her sobbing. He wanted to comfort her, but he knew that if he were to stand up now, she would only become even more flustered and afraid. He stared out the window for a moment before pretending to be unconscious from his drunkenness. Then, he slumped onto the table and fell asleep. After a long time, the sound of sobbing finally disappeared. He heard her footsteps, which were very light and timid. She seemed to look at him for a while to make sure he was really asleep. Then she walked out of the private room and came back with the waiter to send him to the car. Throughout the entire process, not to mention showing concern for him, she didn't even get close to him. When she arrived at his place, she had already called his assistant in advance. Just like when they came out of the bar, she still didn't approach him. She just ordered her assistant to send him upstairs. After he lay down on the bed, she handed a cup of soup to the assistant and said that she still had things to do. She asked the assistant to take care of him and left in a hurry. He didn't open his eyes until the sound of the door closing came from the living room. When the assistant saw him, he immediately held up the hangover soup and said, "Boss Lu, this is the soup that Sister Long just cooked for you. Have some." Lu Binlei glanced at the bowl of hangover soup in his assistant's hands, but he didn't take it. Instead, he glanced at the clock on the wall and saw that it was already 1 in the morning. Thus, he turned to his assistant and said, "It's getting late. You should head back to rest. But Sister Long said that I should stay here to take care of myself." Before the assistant could finish his words, Lu Binlei had already interjected, "I'm fine. Just leave when she asks you to." But after a long time, she was always so cold and indifferent, and he always felt bad. She was thinking about him because of the gamble. She agreed to be with him because of the gamble. Maybe in her heart, she never had any thoughts of being with him. Not even a little bit. Otherwise, Why would she still treat him like a stranger after so long? Lu Binlai, who had been in a daze for a very long time, was jolted back to reality by the vibration of the phone in his hand. He pursed his lips and glanced at the time. Seeing that it was already late, he returned to his bedroom. Chapter 947. After his bath, Lin Jiej climbed onto the bed very lightly. After his bath, Lin Jiej climbed onto the bed very lightly. It wasn't as if he had never returned late when he was busy, and he had seen her sleeping like this many times. But at that time, he would still naturally embrace her in his embrace. But today, he instinctively wanted to hug her. Thinking about how she was pregnant, he was afraid that he might accidentally press down on her stomach. Even though he knew that he was making a big deal out of nothing, he still couldn't help but feel a little worried. So he eventually retracted his arms. Perhaps it was due to the alcohol he had drunk earlier, but he soon felt drowsy. Just as he was about to doze off, he heard Shi Yao's voice beside him. At first, he thought that he was hallucinating or dreaming, so he didn't pay too much attention to it. But a moment later, Shi Yao spoke up once more. He subconsciously woke up, and he turned around to look at Shi Yao. He thought that she had woken up, but to his surprise, she was still in a deep sleep. Yet, the corners of her lips were still moving non-stop. Her voice was very soft, so he couldn't hear her clearly. Thus, he moved closer to her, and it was only then that he heard what she was muttering. Daddy? Mommy? Mommy? Daddy? Was he dreaming? Was she dreaming of her parents? For the past 2 years, her parents hadn't contacted her at all, and she hadn't contacted her parents either. She seemed to be very happy every day, but wasn't she really that happy? In the depths of her heart, she still cared about her parents? Lin Jiej felt as if he had been stabbed in the chest by something, and a sharp pain suddenly jolted through his body. Indeed, he had been careless. He thought that as long as her parents stopped pestering her, she would be able to obtain something from Lin Jiej for them once and for all. But in the midst of all this, he had forgotten one thing. Softbun also needed kinship. She must have been afraid that he would worry, so she didn't show it in front of him. If he hadn't coincidentally heard her talking in her sleep tonight, would she have had to bear this sorrow and desire silently for the rest of her life? Perhaps it was because she had found out that she was pregnant, but the next day, Shi Yao woke up earlier than usual. Lin Jiej wasn't fully awake yet, so she didn't want to disturb him. Instead, she quietly got off the bed and went to wash up. Grandpa Lin, who had always doted on her, knew that she was pregnant, so it went without saying that he would cherish her more than anyone else. Thus, when Shi Yao walked out of her bedroom to drink some water, she saw that Auntie Sun and the chefs of the Lin family old mansion were already busy in the kitchen. With Auntie Sun around, there was no need for her to do anything. While she was waiting for breakfast, she couldn't help but recall the dream she had last night. She didn't know if it was because she was suddenly pregnant, but she actually dreamed of her father and mother last night. For the past 2 years, she had been asking Gu Nanxiang about her parents' situation. When she found out that her mother's health was not good, she secretly gave Gu Nanxiang money and asked him to bring it back so that Gu Nanxiang could subsidize their expenses. Chapter 948. Shi Yao didn't immerse herself in her dream for too long before Auntie Sun called her over for breakfast. Lin Jiej was already awake, and he was currently washing up. After breakfast, Lin Jiej sent her to school with the same cautious look on his face. Before getting out of the car, Lin Jiej nagged at Shi Yao with all sorts of things, but Shi Yao was getting annoyed by his nagging. Just as he was about to go on, she suddenly leaned forward and kissed him on the lips. Lin Jiej immediately fell silent. It was only then that Shi Yao's lips parted from his. She reached out to pinch his cheeks and said, "I'm going to work now. What about you? You should go to work too. Be a good boy." After saying those words, Shi Yao grabbed her bag, leaving the stunned Lin Jiej behind as she got out of the car and entered the school grounds. By the time she reached her office, she received a WeChat message from Lin Jiej. "Yao Yao, do you dislike me? Long? Page stinking of blood, timid of machinery, longing for bamboo to pluck gung badger model? Huawei doesn't care about the turtle. Yi Huawei lowly position junk? Pinching?" Seeing this message, Yao couldn't help but chuckle. Her eyes shone with a warm and blissful light. However, the words that she replied to Lin Jiej with her fingertips weren't as beautiful as before. Nervous? You must have used the wrong word, right? I think you're just being paranoid. Yes, it's paranoid. 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 An aggrieved emoticon followed. Paranoid. Paranoid. Yao typed thrice consecutively, as if she was going to repeat something important thrice. All right, you're crazy. A crying emoticon followed. Yao imagined a cartoonish version of Lin Jiej sitting on the floor bawling his eyes out, and she couldn't help but burst into laughter. However, before she could reply to Lin Jiej's message, the bell for class rang. Putting down her phone, she grabbed her textbooks and headed to the classroom. It was only when Yao left for lunch that she finally had the time to look at her phone. After she left, Lin Jiej had sent her many paranoid messages. In the end, perhaps due to her ignoring him, his messages turned into, "I was wrong." Watching as Lin Jiej muttered to himself for the entire morning, Yao couldn't help but chuckle. She picked up her phone and was just about to give Lin Jiej a call when she saw a familiar figure standing across the road at the entrance of the academy. She felt as if her acupoints had been poked, and she subconsciously stiffened on the spot. She stared at the figure for a long time. Before she could recover, the figure seemed to sense that someone was looking at him and turned to look at her. On the other side of the road, Yao and the silhouette stared at one another quietly. Sometime later, a student walked past Yao and called out, "Teacher Shi." Recovering from her daze, Yao smiled at the student before turning her gaze back to the figure on the other side of the road. This time, they didn't look at one another for too long before Yao began walking toward the opposite side of the road. The silhouette didn't leave. As Yao got closer and closer, she could clearly feel his lips moving, as if he was trying to speak to her. For some reason, Yao couldn't help but feel a little nervous as well. When she was less than 2 meters away from the silhouette, she could clearly feel her fingertips trembling. Stopping in front of that figure, she opened her mouth, then opened it again and again. Finally, she forced herself to speak. Chapter 949. Mom. Perhaps it was due to pregnancy, but Yao's emotional reaction was slightly stronger than that of ordinary people. When Yao called out those words, her eyes reddened, and she nearly burst into tears. Mother Shi seemed to be at a loss as to what to do. Her eyes darted around frantically. There were several times when she wanted to look at Yao, but she didn't dare to meet her eyes. Perhaps it was due to the fact that she had opened her mouth, but Yao found it much easier to speak. "Mom, why are you here?" I. Mother Shi stuttered for a moment before she finally managed to squeeze out a complete sentence. "I came here to look for a job, but I didn't think that I'd meet you here." As she spoke, Mother Shi glanced at the school behind Yao and asked, Yao, are you working here now?" Yao nodded and replied with an Then, she asked, "Mom, have you had lunch yet? If not, why don't we eat together?" Sure. Mother Shi nodded repeatedly. Yao remembered what her mother liked to eat. She had wanted to eat something light, but in the end, she still brought her mother to a nearby Sichuan restaurant for boiled fish. It had been 2 years since they last met, so it was inevitable that the two of them would feel a little awkward. Fortunately, they managed to enjoy the meal peacefully. When it was time to settle the bill, Yao couldn't help but ask Mother Shi, "Mom, my dad, he?" Before Yao could finish her words, Mother Shi had already interjected, "Your dad is getting on in years, and his health hasn't been too good for the past 2 years. However, it's nothing serious." Yao replied with an "oh," not knowing how she should continue the conversation. However, Mother Shi soon spoke up once more. Yao, do you blame your dad and me?" Yao, your dad and I have indeed let you down for what happened back then. We also." Mother Shi seemed to want to say something, but just as the words were about to leave her mouth, she swallowed them back down. "Sigh, forget it. It's all in the past, so let's not talk about it anymore. No matter what, your dad and I are the ones at fault. Yao, if I have the time in the future, can I still come here to visit you?" Over the past 2 years, Yao had dreamed of her mother or father coming to look for her, telling her that they wouldn't be like that anymore. She had always thought that this scene would only exist in her dreams forever, but who could have thought that it would actually come true today? In the end, Yao still couldn't hold back her tears anymore, and tears began streaming down her cheeks. Seeing her cry, Mama Shi's eyes reddened as well. "Mom, don't cry." Yao reached out to wipe away her mother's tears. Mama Shi raised her hand and wiped her face. "Don't cry, don't cry." She said that she wouldn't cry, but the tears in the corners of Mother Shi's eyes increased. She didn't even have time to wipe them away, and in the end, she burst into laughter. Seeing that her mother was smiling, Yao chuckled as well. Yao had lessons in the afternoon, so she didn't chat with her mother for too long before they parted ways. After returning to school, Yao gave Lin Jiej a call before class started. Lin Jiej was currently at work, typing on his keyboard while chatting with her. Most of the time, Yao was the one doing the talking. She said that she had coincidentally met her mother, and she said that her mother had reconciled with her. Even through the phone, Lin Jiej could feel that Yao was so happy that she wanted to spin in circles on the spot. She was happy, and he was happy too. When they arrived at the shop, there were no other customers except for the two of them. It just so happened that Yao had some free time on her hands, so she unhurriedly went from counter to check on her rings. After about half an hour, a polite voice came from the door. "Welcome. There's a new customer here." Out of pure reflex, Yao shot a glance at the door, but in the end, she couldn't help but wonder. Ka. Chapter 951. Lin Jiej was waiting for Yao's opinion on the new pair of rings, but after a long while, seeing no reaction from her, he couldn't help but glance at her before following her line of sight to the entrance of the store. After taking a quick glance at Qiniran, Lin Jiej lowered his head and asked Yao, "Do you know the person who just came in?" Yao was rendered speechless for a moment before replying, "Don't tell me that you don't know her, should I?" Lin Jiej asked nonchalantly. Yao was rendered speechless once more. It was extremely quiet in the store. Even though their conversation wasn't loud, Qiniran still heard it. Yao could clearly see Qiniran's expression, turning a little awful. While Yao did hate Qiniran to the core when they were still in university, it was already 2 years ago, and Yao didn't want to dwell on the past. So, after Qiniran was a distance away from Lin Jiej and her, she quietly asked Lin Jiej, "Do you really not remember her, or are you doing it on purpose?" "I really don't remember." Lin Jiej paused for a moment before asking, "She's from G University?" It seemed like Lin Jiej had really forgotten about her. Yao replied curtly, "That's right. She's from G University. The girl you courted back then was the campus belle." Hearing those words, Lin Jiej suddenly recalled something. How should I put it? She looks a little familiar. So, she's that campus belle who likes to use her Smuff account to scold others on the forum. However, her appearance seems a little different from before. Her facial features look more exquisite, but at the same time, they also seem a little unnatural. She must have gone through a lot of surgery, right? However, Lin Jiej didn't think that Qiniran had much to do with him, so he focused on accompanying Yao to pick out the rings. After choosing a pair of rings, before settling the bill, Lin Jiej recalled that Yao had taken a few extra glances at a set of accessories and a pink diamond during the selection process, so he had the salesperson take them out and help Yao put them on. After that, Lin Jiej tossed a card over and calmly gestured for the salesperson to bring out the items that Yao had tried on before paying the bill together with the other items. After paying the bill, Lin Jiej and Yao were led to the lounge to wait for the salesperson to pack the accessories that they had picked out. Qiniran hadn't left the shop yet. From time to time, she would choose a ring and try it on. After asking about the price, she would return the ring. It didn't take long before the two of them were escorted out of the store with the items they had bought. While they were leaving, Qiniran chose an inexpensive but beautiful ring, snapped a photo of it, and sent it to her current boyfriend. "I want to buy this ring." After waiting for a long time, there was no response. When she called, the other party's phone was already turned off. Seeing that Chiniran wasn't paying the bill or taking off her diamond ring, the salesperson politely asked, "Miss, what do you think of this ring?" Unwilling to give up, Chiniran dialed another number, but it was still switched off. Only then did she remove the phone from her ear and return the ring to Zhang Xian. "I don't really like it. Let me take a look at it again." After which, Chiniran pretended to stroll around the shop for a while before leaving. Chapter 952. To Yao, the things that she had dreamed of her entire life could be easily obtained by her. But what about her? After graduation, the income from the job she found wasn't enough to make ends meet. Eventually, she started playing around with various boyfriends, and eventually, she got pregnant. She didn't even know who the father of the child was, but she was certain that it wasn't her current boyfriend's. Yet, she had no choice but to forcefully pass the child to her current boyfriend. There was no other reason other than that he was the richest man in the world. Of course, he wasn't willing to spend money on her either. Otherwise, he wouldn't have called her darling when he saw the photo of the diamond ring she had taken for him, and her phone wouldn't have been able to reach him no matter how hard she tried. In truth, she wasn't intending to enter this jewelry store today. It was a world-renowned brand, and every single item here cost at least 6 digits. It wasn't something that someone like her could afford, but when she saw him through the window, it had been a long time since they last met, but he still made her heart flutter. Over the years, she had changed boyfriends after boyfriends, and she had long forgotten the feeling of her heart beating. Yet, Lin Jiej was able to bring her the same feeling she had many years ago in G University. When she walked past him in his military uniform, she caught a whiff of his pleasant scent and turned her head around. From then on, her eyes were filled with a myriad of emotions. Compared to the him in G University, the current him was less youthful, but he had a more mature, homey vibe about him. She thought that she had tried her best to make herself more beautiful over the past few years, and she had even done her hair and makeup today. Perhaps he might be interested in her. So, when she stepped into the jewelry store, what she got in return was a "should I know him?" from him. After lunch, under Lin Jiej's careful care, Yao arrived at the hospital. After a long checkup, Lin Jiej noticed that there were quite a few men who were carefully walking along the corridors with one hand on the waist of a pregnant woman and the other on the arm of a pregnant woman. So, he imitated them and helped Yao up. As a result, in the doctor's office, Yao, who had been bombarded with questions like, "How is the child? How is she? How is her blood pressure? How should I take care of her?" finally pushed him away. However, Lin Jiej didn't get angry at all. After regaining his footing, like a little puppy, he leaned forward and said, Yao, I'm just practicing in advance. One day, your stomach will." Yao didn't even need to think to know that Lin Jiej was going to spew out a long string of fallacious arguments. She subconsciously spoke up to shut Lin Jiej up, but before she could say anything, the shrill scream of a woman suddenly sounded from the front. I don't want to, I just don't want to." The voice sounded a little familiar, but Yao couldn't recall who it was. It wasn't that she and Lin Jiej were having a good time, but as they were leaving the hospital, they had to pass by the source of the sound. In truth, there were already quite a few people gathered around the area, but as Yao and Lin Jiej walked closer, they were still able to get a clear view of the scene. A middle-aged man angrily dragged a woman towards the obstetrics and gynecology department. "You have to have it even if you don't want it. You're taking my money to feed the bastard in your stomach. Dream on. I'm telling you, you have to abort this child for me. Otherwise, I'll lose face." You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.